to the Fantasy Fiends podcast because it is just ya boy Stevie and ya boy Andy Peliquin, and today we are talking about nothing.
We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. Today is Stevie goes on a tangent for 60 minutes.
And it's allowed.
I know. It's kind of scary to see where we're going to end up over the course of this episode.
What's great is I'm just as prepared for this episode as I am for all the other ones.
Which is to say not at all.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So we have some really cool stuff for you guys. Lots of I had big news last Thursday. I can't believe it's only been a week. But I do have some really cool news for today. It's not huge news, but it's huge news for me. Hey, Anita, welcome to the podcast/show. So I got some cool stuff to talk about. Just been super busy, man. Have you been busy?
Yes, insanely busy.
How are you taking 10-hour days?
So I start work at 7. And I don't stop, I'm not done, sometimes till 8 with everything that I have to do, 8 p.m.
Wow.
between my son's been going to tutoring in the evening, and that's 6 to 8. So I finish work at 5, sometimes clean the house, maybe try to get in a workout, and then out the door to take him to tutoring. While he's at tutoring, I'll, sit at Starbucks and get more work done. It's just been crazy days. Regine, you're lucky enough Stevie's lucky enough that there are no guests, so he can't mispronounce their names. But I'm pretty sure he's going to call one of his books by the name of one of my books before the end of this.
I remember I was showing, before I even had emailed Andy, this was when I thought authors were rock stars, because you have no idea, right? And I emailed Andy, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this dude emailed me back like a mini short story of words," and it makes me excited. I hope people think that about me, because I am a rock star. No, what was I saying?
I have no idea.
Because when I was reading your book, I thought you were Andy Peliquin for the longest time, and I was like, this poor guy in high school. This poor guy. Wait, speaking of high school, your son is getting tutored for 2 hours?
Well, it's not him on his own. It's the local university has tutoring available for students who need help with both college and high school classes.
Okay, and he's in high school.
Yeah, he's in high school.
Senior?
12th grade. Yeah.
God, when I met you, wasn't he a freshman or a sophomore?
When you met me, I think he wasn't even in high school yet.
Dear God, where has the time gone?
Or the first year of high school. I know it's been a while. The podcast has been running for over 2 years. Jesus. We've been doing the Fantasy Fiends podcast, and we've been hanging out. No, we've been hanging out for about 3 years now.
Dude, that's insane. We got turned at a convention. Had a crazy reading. We went to awards. Wow, it's crazy to look back. And this would be a cool podcast, looking back, I should do an edit, or hire a VA to do an edit of all the funniest things in the podcast, 5 minutes worth of hilarious stuff that's happened. I should take freaking notes during our podcast now so I can make those. But I do have big plans for the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I would like to make it larger. Just because I have so much fun on this. Hey, Sherry. Hey, Tony. Welcome to a short story of words. Yes, everyone's just calling me out of my shit today. And it's not just your ass.
I've trained our viewers and listeners well. They know to call you out, Stevie.
Do it. Please do. In fact, if everyone will go to our podcast channel and check out episode... or it's right before Fantasy Fiends show special and right after the Fantasy Fiends podcast Disrupted. It's right before 108. You'll see my amazing, why was I going to say delicious? My amazing thumbnail for that episode. It's got 24 views too, and I don't know why. It was a mistake episode. So have you seen that one yet?
Probably.
Oh, it's of a cat just saying, "Hang in there, baby." And then I couldn't find for some reason won't let me change the thumbnail on the Disrupted one. Fun fact, the funniest fiend, the Fanny
The Fanny Fiends would be a very, very different sort of podcast, Stevie.
The Fanny Fiends podcast almost ended a month ago, right, Andy? With the ending of Google Hangouts.
Oh, yeah.
It was a possibility because, like, what do you do now? Is there another way to get on YouTube broadcasts? You know?
Yeah, that's very true. So that was a fun little. It was about a week, actually. To be perfectly honest, it was really only like a day or two because I was supposed to have done all the research for. I'm sort of the techie guy. Stevie handles the business, and I had set aside time to research how to do the podcast. And of course, I got super busy, so I didn't end up doing it until literally the day of the podcast. And so I had to end up calling our guest and telling him, sorry, technical difficulties, because I was just so busy. I was traveling. I was actually in Seattle that day, the day of the podcast, and I had to tell the guest, we can't make it. But we figured it out. Here we are.
Wow, that was a really bad time in my life because my dad's business got shut down because of a hacker. And this was Amazon, right? So we make my dad makes money to support my family and 3 other families that only make this income from this one business. And we got hacked. So it wasn't our fault. And Amazon shut us down because they didn't want us to lose money. Well, we ended up losing thousands of dollars, right? Not profit. I'm not trying to say we're like some multimillionaires and like, I'm not trying to gloat, but we lost all that money. And we had emailed, I think I told Andy, we were emailing Amazon just every hour. We're sending them an email to customer service. Well, they are horrible at customer service for sellers. You know how we got our account back and how we act? Like, my dad was on the verge of having to let 3 workers go who anyway, we had taken a loan out on Amazon and the loan officer called us. I'm like, hey, why aren't you paying your bill? And I'm like, well, we can't pay our bill because we can't get on our Amazon. 2 minutes, he clicked on his computer and boom, we had our account back up.
Wow.
So I told my dad we need to start taking out at least $20,000 to $50,000 worth of loans to pay for product through Amazon. So we'll never have that problem again. And that's why, like, you can go back and watch those episodes. I look like a zombie. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah, that was low energy, Stevie.
Whew, man, I lost my appetite, and I eat everything. So look, that's a good looking back story. That was there's been a few tough times for me on the podcast. Andy, you've been pretty.
Yeah. I think we were talking with our guest about that last week, about how the guest was whoever our guest was last week, he was saying that he was kind of stable, and that's like me. It's just like not. Oh, is Ronald? Yeah, Ronald was all like he had that really chill voice, super laid back demeanor, and he's like, yeah, my wife's a roller coaster, and I'm kind of like that, and that's my life too.
That's us. I'm the roller coaster.
Yes, you are the emotional roller coaster.
You are the separator in the lines outside the roller coaster.
Stevie, I'm the wind beneath your freaking wings.
So Andy, I know you have good news. Andy has not told me the news, but first let me say, Rashawn, I feel like I haven't seen you in forever, man. Welcome. Yeah, my dad has three secret. Jesus. Yeah, only 3, right, Tony? Which is why Andy and I are just like, all we do is work. So it's like, after we know with the podcast, I feel like both of us don't speak for like 8 hours because we're by ourselves. Who is Holly and Mistletoe again?
It's Kelly Erickson.
Okay. Man, I always get that mixed up. Re-enable reviews, so you guys need to make sure reviews are cool. Rajin. Okay. So we have some cool news, both of us. Andy, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
You do your first, Stevie.
Okay. So my good news is tomorrow I officially start working on my new project. Oh, yes, he's.
It didn't shut off.
Oh, it didn't.
or it quickly activated the microphone built into the computer or something.
Oh, no. Dude, I have Dragon Natural Speak now for writing emails, which I need to get my money back because it doesn't work on Google Chrome or any of them. Anyway, I had Microsoft Word up and I was in the kitchen making protein French toast and I was yelling at the cat and I came back to all this jumbled like, get off the counter. What were they saying? Oh, tomorrow I officially start writing I am the new face of the Gateway to the Galaxy series. The title is I Am Mech, and the series name is Shadow Tech Wars.
Tentatively.
Tentatively, yes. We're not 100% sure. Monkey, get out of the way. Monkey always comes up here when the camera's on. I don't know why. She's not up here all day long. That's her butt. But yeah, that is my good news. It's been 2 months since I have written. Things are kind of slowing down, so yeah, I'm really excited. It's really good news for me.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And so, you know, I guess, is it my turn?
Yeah. I guess I'll just say I'm going to try Dragon Natural Speak on Word, and I'll let everyone know how it works, because I think I write 120 words a minute. I don't know if Dragon Natural Speak is going to be able to beat that. I'm not just boasting. I really don't know. So maybe if I train it, you know, I might get better. Because Andy, you're the one who gave me the idea.
Yeah, so there is a whole book. There's a bunch of books actually called How to Train Your Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon.
That's a totally different book.
I can think of some ways. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
Just one second.
Books on it?
Yeah, there's books about how to teach the software to recognize, you know, your voice, how to adapt to your things, also how to teach yourself the commands and stuff that you need to actually half-ass format the words you're dictating so that you can make it make sense. But I haven't yet. I don't have the brain power, or my style of writing. I'm not sure if I can wrap my head around that style of writing. So we'll see if I ever get around to giving it a try.
Yeah, because I pause a lot when I write, because I don't go back like you do and inject stuff, you know. And I feel like do you pause a lot though, since you're not doing that?
No, I work pretty straightforward. Like I move forward in a linear fashion. I don't really pop back. I mean, sometimes I do, you know, sometimes if I see that, okay, for example, I was going to say, you know, so a big explosion just happened in the book I'm working on. And he says, through the dancing flashes of light, he saw this. And the next paragraph, I wanted to say through the ringing in his ears, but then I just said that same sentence structure in the beginning of the previous sentence. So I'm like, how can I do this better? That's sort of when I do it, when I want to keep when the flow needs to feel right. But most of the time it's just like, keep moving forward. I'll drop a little note on a previous chapter, like add this here or whatever. And that's it.
I got you. Well, I'll let you know how Dragon Natural speaks for me. Gonna practice with it. I'm not gonna give up on it, but it does suck that I can't work on it in Google. Okay, what is your good news?
So there's two good newses.
Oh, two good newses.
Yes. Well, let's make it three good newses. So
wow.
The first one is a little one. It's a big deal for me, but so far I am about 40,000 words into The Last March, which is the final book of the Silent Champion series. Basically, it's divided into three parts. There's the assault on the castle, there's the fighting retreat, and then the last stand, right? From before you read this book, you'll know the story of the last march of the Ninth Company, so you know exactly what's coming. It's just how I'm going to get there that's still unknown. So I'm 40,000 words in. The first third is done. The battle, has already been lost. They're doing the fighting retreat, and the problem is I don't know how to get the soldiers from the fighting retreat to the desperate last stand, how to make it all happen and stuff.
Okay.
So as I'm working on it, the story is coming, it's taking shape. Things like I'm pantsing it a lot more than I have anything else, just because it didn't work out for me to outline the story. And it's not as needed to outline it as other stories that I've done in the past, because it is kind of this, like they're basically marching 100 miles in a straight line. And there's an enemy coming behind them, and the enemy's faster than them. There's 2,000 of them versus 200 and some of them. Like it's absolutely, it's 300 meets the Chain of Dogs from Malazan, which for me it was imprinted hardcore in my brain. That one, that whole bit in book 2. So I'm getting to write this one. This was actually the second thing. No, this was the first thing that I wrote when I was started. I wrote when I was 18, 19, 20, stopped when I was 20. And then when I submitted a piece that I'd written to a comic book publisher. They loved it. They wanted to publish it as a comic book. So I thought, okay, if this is something that I wrote when I was 19, they love it. Let's try it. Let's see what I can do now. So I wrote this comic book script called The Last March of the 13th Rifles. And it was, fantasy, like D&D fantasy. There's dwarves with, like primitive rifles, and elves, and the bad guys are basically demons. And it was a ton of fun to write. I still do want to turn it into a comic book script eventually, but it's been fun turning it into this fantasy world. So it's set chronologically 15 years before the events of Shields and Shadow. It shows it's sort of the backstory a little bit for one of the characters who comes in later on in the series in books 3 and 4, Captain Lingram. But it's it's a critical piece in the puzzle because it shows a little bit more about what happened, the bad guys and stuff like that. So the story is coming together. I hope to have it, at least the rough draft, finished within the next couple of weeks, trying to get it to 150,000 words so I will cross the 1 million word mark for the Silent Champion series.
That's crazy. I don't even know if I've written 1 million words. What? I've written, how many books have I written? 9. So I've either hit it or I'm really, really close.
As long as all 9 of your books are over 110,000 words, you've hit it.
See, that's the thing. Lionheart is not, but I also have a ton of short stories. So I'm just like, I don't know.
I think I
probably have.
Yeah. So that's one of the good news is that the story is coming together. It's still very stressful. It's still very exhausting. I'm really reaching the end of my rope on military fantasy because it is insanely complex.
I don't know how you're doing that. I do not know how you're doing it. So to you.
I'm looking forward to getting back to writing something very simple, very straightforward. One man, one weapon, as many enemies as it takes to give him a challenge, which leads to the second bit of news, which is something that I'm actually quite excited about. This idea for a sci-fi assassin has been kicking around in my brain. This is not the big news, so you weren't right.
Okay, you're right, because I was thinking something about a sci-fi novel. Something about a sci-fi novel. Okay, so I was second place winner.
Yeah, so this idea has been kicking around in my head for a little while, and I needed sort of a breather from the military fantasy, basically from military, right? So it was just, I sat down to write it, and this story, like the chapter just basically not wrote itself, but it just flowed so nicely. And then the second chapter, it was just a perfect continuation. And then by the time I wrote the third chapter on Monday, I basically have the entire outline of the first book, or I know exactly what needs to happen over the course of the book, including, who the bad guys are, why everything happens, why he killed this guy in the opening scene of the book, how it affects the rest of the book. Mm-hmm. And so basically it's this story of a former special ops sniper who gets hit by shrapnel, and the shrapnel destroys his vertebrae. And so he's paralyzed from like the thigh down. I've got to figure out the exact, which vertebrae gets hit. I've got, JT Williams, our paramedic friend, figuring it out for me.
Oh, cool.
But he's basically almost paraplegic, or he is paraplegic, so his legs don't work.
Williams was like, what happened?
No, the sci-fi assassin is paraplegic, so he wears basically a combat suit, which it really covers a multitude of sins, because I can get away with calling it a combat suit, and it can be anything. But so far, the combat suit, it has wings, like mechanical wings that snap out and he can fly. It's got boot thrusters. It's got it's military grade hardware. He's got this badass gun. So the opening scene is him preparing to shoot his target, and he's like, oh, this is too easy. This gun was designed to shoot through super high-tech military grade glass and take out someone piloting a mech. So shooting at a skyscraper with regular architectural glass is it's almost cheating. And so that's kind of how the story started out, and that's how it's evolved over the course of the thing. But the character is a fascinating one because the paraplegic angle alone is a really fun one to play with. And I wanted to do it for a while, but figuring out how to do it within the context of a fantasy world is more challenging, because short of magic, it's really, really difficult to get some sort of control over the legs of someone who's paraplegic. And so I had thought of, like gnomish mechanisms, or I didn't really have any specific ideas. And then all of a sudden, this sniper assassin came into mind, and it's like, boom, combat suit plus an AI chip in his brain. So all of a sudden, you've got these two super fun things to play with. And the story basically came alive in my brain. So it's shaping up to be 10 books, 12 books. Not exactly certain yet. I haven't sat down to...
Wait, how do you know that already?
Because that's how long I feel it's going to take to tell the story.
Okay.
I haven't sat down to plan it all out. I've got the first book planned out, or roughly planned out. But then I know basically every time it's going to be sort of a step up the hierarchy of a harder kill, a harder hit. There's going to be assassin versus assassin. There's going to be like a paraplegic or amputee versus amputee paraplegic. There's going to be he's going to do a hit in space. He's going to shoot through spaceship glass, or the screen, or whatever you call it. I still haven't done any of the research on this, but he's going to shoot through the windshield of a spaceship and hit his target. Like, this is all stuff that I want to do, and I can finally do it because it's it's a sniper, and I can make technology and do all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun when I get around to it, and that's going to, of course, come with its own. You guys know me and my approach to world building, because already I've got the 3-book or the trilogy prequel that shows him in the special ops as the sniper or the designated marksman, and all the fun that comes with that. So right now we're looking at anywhere from 10 to 15 books in the sci-fi world, which I will try to write alongside my new fantasy series, The Shattered Empire. It may push the release of that one back a little bit. It'll also delay Future Hero of Darkness books a little bit, but I think writing this is going to be an awesome palate cleanser. For me, I'm feeling the strain of writing in the fantasy genre for a little bit. So I'm excited to play around in this new arena a bit. And the books get to be shorter. I don't have to do massive epics. I can write something shorter than 100,000 words if I'm physically capable of that.
I see. That's what we were talking about before the podcast. Is I don't know if I'm going to be able to write 60,000 words. 50,000 is what I'm supposed to write, and I was like, I just don't think I can do that right now.
Yeah,
that's just wow. So I mean, what are we now, Andy? Are we gonna think about having some sci-fi authors on?
We are. Basically, as soon as I'm done with the rough draft of the last March, I'm going to put it aside, and I'm going to hammer out the prequel short story / novella to start building my newsletter list for whatever sci-fi stuff I get around to writing. Once that happens, I will officially be somewhat of a sci-fi writer as well. So we will need to start inviting sci-fi guests on. And Rashun, don't think I haven't thought about that. Both the sci-fi series and the Shattered Empire will be much, much heavier on the romance. This is the new frontier for me to conquer. I've done
romance. You got to have it in that genre.
Yeah. So I started off with the Hunter, who was this complex character. I pushed the boundaries and wrote a female character. I pushed the boundaries further, wrote young adults. I pushed it further with military. Now I've got magic, high fantasy, dragons, and romance in the Shattered Empire, and I've got sci-fi and modern world building and more modernistic themes in the sci-fi series. So I am very excited to push myself as a writer. That's really what gets me up in the morning.
Wow, just where we've come from when we first started this. I mean, both of us are like, sci-fi, no way. And now we're like, dude, I'm feeling a little robotic right now. Domo arigato.
I always knew that I would write sci-fi as soon as I had a story to write. And it was up until a few weeks ago that I didn't have a story. I had, little bits and pieces of ideas that none of them are in this world at all. It was just things that hadn't burgeoned or blossomed into an idea, and then this idea came, and here we are. And now for the final good news, the big good news.
The big news. I don't understand. How's this the big news? What's going on?
The big news is I got a book bub.
Dude, no way.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
For those of you who don't know what BookBub is, basically it's like the biggest promotional website of the internet for books.
Wow.
And so most authors, they apply dozens of times. I've applied a lot. And then actually Jonathan Yanez was the one who told me, look, I just keep applying. Every time they reject me, I send in more submissions. So I talked to him last week and I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. And on Monday, I submitted Darkblade Assassin, the Queen of Thieves box set, and maybe Heirs of Destiny. Or anyways, I submitted 3 books, and the next day I got news back that I'd gotten the BookBub for Darkblade Assassin. It will be only international, Canada, UK, Australia, and India, not the US. But the fact that they are doing it with a book that is exclusively in Kindle Unlimited, and it's a 7-book series, hopefully that means some good things.
Wow, dude, that is awesome. That is really good news.
Yeah, and so that comes in, that's October 5th. So I will actually be doing a big discount sale on books 1 and probably 2 for that weekend, and running a bunch of ads and doing promo stacks and stuff like that to hopefully maximize visibility and get some nice sell-through on the whole series and get more people into my crazy fantasy world, just as literally 4 days after Silent Champions book 2 comes out.
That blows my mind. You're right, dude. You got me. That was the last thing I would think of, because I just stopped with all that stuff because it just was taking my time. And wow, dude, that's really cool.
And so I am going to keep submitting to them. Like, I didn't have Child of the Night Guild is already at 99 cents, so the best I could do is go for a free promo. Shields and Shadow was at 99 cents. I just flipped up the price to full price on Tuesday, so I can submit it now. But I didn't want to submit stuff like the Heirs of Destiny because that's sort of a sequel that may or may not work. So I focused on the ones that are the series starters, and here we are.
Dude, that's great. That's really, really cool. So, well, now that you've destroyed my good news, really appreciate that, man.
Sorry, I did not come in intending to destroy your good news. I am very excited for you because I think you would have a great sci-fi voice. I'm very excited to read it when you actually get around to writing it. You just have to find the right character.
Wait, are you saying about my book?
Yeah, yours. Like I found this character's voice already, this Nolan Garrett character. And I'm really excited for his story because it's a story very not similar to The Hunters, but it's close enough that I can really sink my teeth into this sort of PTSD veteran, former drug addict, paraplegic. It's the kind of story that I have loved telling since day one. It's the story that I've tried to tell to an extent with every single character. So as soon as you find this character that just resonates with who Stevie Collier is and what his voice is, it's going to be an awesome story. I mean, Jigsaw, I didn't get it at first, but then once I got into it, I loved it. And I think that's going to be the same thing with your sci-fi. Once you find what works, it'll be awesome.
Well, first of all, thank you. I'm very excited about this one, but the main character was harder for me to write than I believe. So I Am Mech is actually character driven, as most of my stories are. So the story I have in my head is broad, but the character is pretty solid. So that's why I'm so excited to get started. And I'm going to let the character kind of help me figure out where the story goes, which scares me because, again, I have to keep it at 60,000 words.
How can you tell us anything about the character or no?
Yeah, so if you've read the Jigsaw Blade, or actually not the Jigsaw Blade, if you've read Golden Blade, you will have met a character named Ace Whetstone, who I was going to pull into his own fantasy series. But seeing as how the Bizarre Blade series cost me $22,000 to produce, I will not be putting him into a fantasy series, but into a series where Jonathan is actually producing it all for me, which is just a typical, when you get into someone's world, they usually do that. And then he takes his, makes his money back, and then we start making profit. I am taking that character and putting him into this series, but I'm changing him up a little bit for sci-fi fans. But honestly, I was talking to Jonathan, and I was doing some research on sci-fi characters. the characters I've written for fantasy would always have done better in a sci-fi setting, which blew my mind. They're funnier, they're more romantically inclined, and I'm very open. Like I allow romance to happen a lot easier than they should have happened. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's more of a dreamy thing, like guys dream about, like, oh, they wish they could get the girl a little bit easier. Oh yeah, she's being a little sassy, but then you get her at the end.
Wish fulfillment.
Yeah, wish fulfillment, right? Which I don't believe people liked a lot in fantasy, or it was half and half, maybe. You know, what do you think?
Yeah, I will say that most fantasy readers, not the, like there are the subgenre of people who, or the category of people who will enjoy like the reverse harem fantasy, of which there is some, maybe lit RPG sort of reverse harem style. But I think a lot of fantasy readers go into reading their fantasy expecting to see, you know, the like sort of the more genuine humanity, the relationships that feel more real, as opposed to the more fun, lighthearted style. There is definitely plenty of fantasy books that just kind of have fun with it along the way, but you know, I think they want a little bit more of the deeper styles of romance. Whereas I think in sci-fi you're getting a lot more male versus female readers, so you can play with things a little bit more. It's a little bit more fun.
And what's bad is I'm so pulled back away from trying to do that in fantasy. I hope I can kind of turn the heat up a little bit more for sci-fi. So it's kind of like I've been wishy-washy, you know, like what do people want from me, you know? But I was more worried about starting the Jigsaw Blade than I am this series. But just because I've learned so much from people like you know, just asking tons of questions, meeting other authors. I mean, if you're going to be an author, you got to really put your heart into it, and you got to spend a lot of time. I mean, I can barely read the Four Territories, you know. But what's cool is I wanted to do a rewrite where I go and read everything and then rewrite it. But I'm thinking maybe I should just write it again. But I'll probably just end up doing a rewrite profit-wise, you know, thinking business decision, going over it, taking out passive, which I think was a huge, oh God, I can't even, my heart. The sun was rising, you know, it's just like, God, the sun peeked over the horizon. I mean, it's a big difference, you know, in over a long period of time while reading, that stuff makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Which I had no idea. When you told me that I had to take out passive, I'm like, what the hell is passive? Which is a warning sign, you know. And I bet most people here are writing books. I'm afraid to say who is writing books because I don't know it's a secret. Rebecca writes, you know, and she's probably laughing. He's like, Stevie didn't know what passive was? No, I didn't know. Not afraid to admit it. But anyway, it's just cool. Andy, when we started, dude, BookBub, like we were always trying, and now it's cool. 3 years later, you have one. We're moving to sci-fi. It's just great to see the growth, you know. And you have a 1,000,000-word series. Like, geez, that's crazy.
I know, that was pretty insane. And 900,000 of them were written. Oh no, 850,000 of them were written this year.
You're a madman.
Yeah, that was. It's been a pretty busy year, but man, the things that these words communicate, the story that they tell, some of these things are just, it's just amazing. Some of the moments that I got to write in between these various characters, both the moments of humor, but then also like the deeper things, like some of these things, I got to delve into my feelings towards the death of my oldest brother through this character, through this story.
Yeah, I remember that. That was
I wrote poetry.
What?
You know, I wrote poems for the Silent Champion series. Yeah, absolutely. And it's being turned into songs. Like I've got one, my dad is turning the Brave Soldiers March, which is the funeral dirge for the Legion of Heroes. He's turning it into a song that'll be released in the next couple of months. And then I've got someone turning the song from book 4 into a song like The Misty Mountains Cold or Jenny of Old Stones. Those are both songs that I really loved. And so I'm getting these songs made that I will have to accompany this world.
Honestly, I did not know you and your dad were speaking again.
What? I've always been on good terms with my dad.
Okay, I didn't know that. Your family's difficult, man. No, I'm kidding. I know you have a lot of siblings.
Yeah, a lot of siblings.
Ironically now. Or was that planned?
What's that?
Or was that planned?
What was?
moving next to your brother?
No, so we did. I mean, we moved to Canada because that's where he is. But it was to move closer to my wife's sister who lives here, where we're in the same city we are.
I got you. So I think that's it for this podcast. But before I ended it, I was
hell no, we've still got 20 minutes, Stevie.
No, I know, but I was thinking, I think it's kind of, we were getting down to that point where we'd start doing a reading. So I was thinking about doing something we've never done before, and that is having people ask us questions, and we will put the question up on the screen and we'll answer it.
That sounds good.
I thought it'd be fun.
But then why would you say end it? Like, why would you even use the E word, Stevie?
My idea was, I was like, oh, well, our reading's coming up, but we don't have anything. What do we do now? And I was like, wait a minute. Here's an idea.
We can still keep with Stevie. We can talk for a long time, and by we, I generally mean you. If you get me started,
I knew you were gonna say that.
If you get me started about my stories and stuff, I will talk forever.
I don't talk. I'm very quiet and I'm very shy.
That's not the person I remember from the Indie Scribe conference last year.
Oh man, that was a lot of. When does that start again?
So this year they couldn't host it, but next year they're doing it in Chicago.
Why didn't
Peoria?
Wait, where?
In Peoria, Illinois.
Oh, why didn't they host it this year? Just money wise?
There some stuff fell through, I think.
Oh, that's a good question. So Rebecca asked Stevie, "What do you bench?" I actually do not bench a lot. So you'll see a lot of guys in the gym, they're benching a lot, but if you watch their form, some guys get it right and they're just legitimately strong, but most guys will either bounce it off their chest or they're not going low enough.
They bounce it off their chests?
They will bounce it off their chest, and it is an actual technique. It is a technique to bounce it off your chest, and it's very scary, but some guys get away with it, especially bigger dudes. But I will put a 45 on each side, and I will, Lisa and I do this now. It's called time under tension. I'll just drop it 6 seconds down all the way to my chest, touch, pause, 3 seconds up. Nice. So max bench, I would probably say, if I'm like super pumped up, 195, and that is baby weight for a guy my age, height, and weight.
Not bad. All right, DW, I'm taking this one. You know what? I want to say elves because the concept of elves is it's rarely done to actually take into account the incredibly long lifespan of elves. So a lot of people fail to explore the psychological and physiological ramifications of having a super long life like that.
I'm going to agree because I did the same thing with Dark Assassin, but he was half elvish and it wasn't a real, I just wanted him different, which was another mistake I made with the series. So,
all right. Yeah, Rashun, have we ever thought about getting Brandon Sanderson? All I have ever thought about is getting Brandon Sanderson in literally whatever context you want to take it. Hilarious setup there. Rebecca, I expect you to take that one and run with it. But I have absolutely wanted to get Brandon Sanderson on the podcast. I don't know if he would ever come on. I don't think we're big enough yet for it to be worth his time, considering how busy he is. But
I have tried, though.
You did? Okay, there you go.
Yes, I have tried, and I got no response, which I understand. He's busy making up cuss words. I get it.
He's definitely busy. He's busy writing ridiculous amounts of words. Take this one, Stevie.
What genre do I think I could never write? Now Amish romance.
I could nail that.
I know. Well, I could BS it, but would I ever want to? Probably not. I would say sweet romance. There's no way. There's no way you could pay me enough to sit there and write a sweet romance. I couldn't do it. I just think it's boring. Obviously, I'm not being rude to people who like it. It's just my personal taste. It's not my thing. What about you, Andy?
You know, I'm trying to think. So the Hero of Darkness is fairly horror adjacent. I feel like probably horror would be the one that I would struggle with the most because I don't have sort of the splatter gore feel for it. Like that would be the more, the more bloody, let's say, styles of horror. I don't know if I have that sort of dark tension as much. Like, obviously I make a lot of tension in my books and things are always naturally very dark, but it caters more towards a thrilling adventure as opposed to more of a scathing critique or a look at, you know, things like that. So I'm not sure if I could write horror. I was thinking thriller, but I mean, if I'm playing with sci-fi, I can just, you know, scale it back to modern technology. I just don't want to, because I don't want anybody to tell me that my world, something can't be done. I want to say I can do it exactly how I want. I just have to make it realistic enough.
I hear horror is one of the more difficult genres to write. That's just what I've heard. And if you think about it, it's like, yeah, you can put a creepy monster in a closet, but then what? But what scares me doesn't scare most people. Creepy monsters and ghosts and stuff do scare me. I think people my age and a little bit older, they get scared more of like realistic threats, you know, people in your house and stuff.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. That is, are we talking the stupidest thing or the worst thing? I'll actually, so I had to, for a lot of, I double majored in French and business, and I got, for my final in French, I had to write a 20-page paper in French, which was a nightmare, and I had to write it on jihadism. And so I had to look up a lot of stuff on jihadism stuff, and it got to the point where I got really nervous because I was seeing some stuff I didn't know that I was allowed to see. And then as soon as I saw blown up body bits, I was like, I'm done. No more. I'm sticking to academic journals only. And it's just really sad, the things that I saw. So
yeah,
the weirdest thing was the females who get tricked on Facebook to go over there. And then they get over there because they're deemed terrorists now and they can't come back to the US.
The jihadi brides, I think they call them.
And it's crazy because as soon as they get over there, like, oh, I made a mistake. I was tricked. And it's a mental manipulation.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the word. I know it was, oh, you said for books. Dang it.
Well, so I had to look up grooming, which pedophiles use to groom children for the Night Guild series.
Ooh, that's
because I wanted to understand how the Night Guild would essentially break a child's mind. Obviously, they don't do it for the purpose of, sexual shit, but that, everything that they did to break children would apply. It would just be a different outcome or a different path that they take. So aside from the very real types of what's it called? Brainwashing, which is not a thing. It's called thought manipulation.
Really?
I also looked up that because that was something that I had to get right to make Alana's story realistic. Here's a fun one for you, Stevie.
Okay. Here we go. What do you think about the current trend of picking apart art-like books and movies and looking for offensive material? Is offensive subjective, or do you think there's a standard? Honestly, I don't waste my time with it. It's also really big right now on Reddit. I just saw the other day, like, a big trend that I'm seeing now is people saying that we are getting sex, like women rights shoved down our throats, like with the new Gears of War 5 with the female protagonist, or also we have the culture, the races being shoved down our throat with the mermaid, black skin stuff. It doesn't bother me. I don't worry about it myself. I'm a big law of attraction guy, so I kind of stay away from the news, and I kind of just let everybody do their own thing until it starts affecting my freedom. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, so I know that a lot of people dissect the arts. A good example of this is the Captain Marvel movie. A lot of people had a lot of problems with the Captain Marvel movie because they were saying, like you were saying, that they were shoving feminism down the throats and stuff. And I think what that was is they didn't do what they were trying to do properly. So I actually read sort of an analysis of what the writers were trying to convey through the story that they were telling through Captain Marvel's story, which was, in all of society, women are told to control their emotions, to rein it in, don't show what you're actually feeling, all of that. And it's only when Captain Marvel lets out how she actually feels that she comes into her full power, that she gets her full power. And And I didn't get that through the course of the movie. It was only when I read it that I realized, okay, this is what they tried to do. I can see how they tried to do it, but it was done incorrectly. And so in failing to do it correctly, the movie, like, it failed on those levels. Whereas other movies, like, let's say Wonder Woman, when Wonder Woman makes that little crack about how, you know, how men are controlled by that little thing, I immediately got it to be a dick joke, that men are controlled by their dicks, but it was done so cleverly that, you know, they referred it to the watch, which is another really good example of how we are so controlled by time and death and the desire to accomplish things within a thing, you know, within society's, you know, sort of time frames that they've given us. Or when Wonder Woman just sort of squeals out in joy at seeing a baby or ice cream. These little moments of humanity in the movie, they were done so well that it wasn't like it was communicated what they were trying to do effectively. So when it's done right, it's not overt, it's not shoved down your throat. It's subtle, it's very clear to understand, and it's something that resonates a lot with audiences, which is why Wonder Woman is possibly one of the top 5 superhero movies of all times.
I was going to say, I enjoyed Wonder Woman 100 times over Captain Marvel. The only thing I really liked about Captain Marvel was the cat and the villain. The villain had me cracking up. I just love that type of character.
Yeah. And so, but it was a different kind of movie, what they were trying to do, you know? Like the Wonder Woman movie was much more serious, but it had a little bit of humor in it, and that made it so amazing. The Captain Marvel movie didn't quite hit it right. It's still a fun movie. It's definitely not Thor: The Dark World, you know. I would say it's sort of middle of the spectrum in terms of the Marvel movies, because there's a lot of things about it that I really enjoyed. But overall, it just didn't hit right as well as the Wonder Woman, because Wonder Woman was done right. Rebecca, I would have to say better than Wonder Woman or more enjoyable was Guardians. I mean, Thor 3, the Ragnarok, that movie fired on so many cylinders. It was so fun. And
I love that movie. A lot of people crap on that one, though.
Yeah, really? Thor, the Ragnarok?
There's one guy who crapped on it, but I really trust his opinion. It's he was our first guy on this podcast, and he did not like it. I know, but I thought like he was the king, the Disney World guy.
Ragnarok and Black Panther, I would say, are 2 of the movies that were better than Wonder Woman. Black Panther was a movie where I didn't give a shit about the action scenes, because the rest of the world building and the character development and the flavor of the story was so intriguing for me. I wanted to see him as king making the kingly decisions, and I wanted to see the sister doing the tech stuff, and I wanted to see all of the various elements around it. And then he goes and he fights, and it's cool and it's interesting and it's fun, and yay, Ray, you know, kicking ass. But it was really the world building at large that made it interesting. Rebecca, I'm not going to disagree with you, because Wonder Woman was spectacular and I enjoyed it so much. I just enjoyed Black Panther a lot too.
I would say my 2 favorite characters are Star-Lord and Peter Parker, just because I see myself in them, sort of different parts. Anyway, what's our next question? Do we have any more?
No more questions yet. But, you know, going on Spider-Man, Homecoming was very possibly the best Spider-Man rendition in terms of the Spider-Man character that they first introduced, sort of this younger, bumbling high schooler. All of the other Spider-Mans were a little bit cooler in essence. So maybe especially the original trilogy, the first Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 1 with Tobey Maguire, that was probably a more epic Spider-Man. But the Spider-Man that Tom Holland portrayed in Homecoming it felt more true to the character.
I just grew up with the first one, but I honestly have enjoyed them all a lot. There wasn't really one that I didn't like. I didn't really care for Mysterio in the third one.
You know what? In Far From Home, I wanted them to flip the script like they did with the Skrull guy in Captain Marvel. I wanted Mysterio, who everybody knows is a bad guy, to be a good guy.
I wanted that too, and But the only thing that made the movie was the epilogue, and I don't want to give it away if no one's seen it, which they should have by now.
The epilogue is very possibly the greatest Marvel moment.
Yep. I turned to the guy next to me. He was by himself. He's like, "Do you need a hug?"
I would say that is even almost a better Marvel moment than the Avengers end game moment where all of the superheroes sort of emerge from the thing and fight. Like I love that scene, right? There was the goosebumps, there was all that stuff when it was all the Avengers and all those kick-ass people against Thanos, right? Goosebump moment, hardcore. But seeing that one face pop up on the screen, it was like the fanboy in me. They gave me exactly what I knew all along that I wanted and yet didn't know what I wanted. So, Stevie, take us away.
Favorite fantasy series? What's weird is I'm a fantasy author, but I read mostly science fiction. Man, it kind of has changed. I want to say that right now my favorite series would be Nicholas Eames's. What do you think, Andy?
Solid choice. I would definitely say the Kings of the Wild Bloody Rose series is going to be in my top 10 or 15. Top 1 is a little bit hard because there's so many good ones, so many that I love. Like, Chronicles of Narnia kind of started me out. Conan the Barbarian. I mean, he's Conan the Barbarian. It's like iconic. The one that I would say captured me most effectively would probably be the Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch. Number 1, it's Con Artist. I love Con Artists. Both Leverage and Hustle are 2 of my favorite TV shows. So when we put it into a fantasy world, blew me away. Love the characters, love the world building. Yes, Tony, Rhaenyra's up there. Rhaenyra's not going to be the top 3. It's probably going to be the top 7 because Royce and Hadrian, their back and forth is just so good. And then The Way of Kings, the first Stormlight Archives book, just the complexity of the world building and all of that blew my mind. Like I'd read the Mistborn series or one of the Mistborn books. I'd read Elantris, but it wasn't until I read The Way of Kings that I was like, okay, this guy is just amazing.
Yeah, he's a freak. He's a freak of nature.
He's just very, very talented. He is like the Robert Jordan or the J.R.R. Tolkien in the sense that his sort of talent really only comes around once in a generation, or he's a very rare talent, and that's what makes him such an amazing author.
I think I know your answer for this one, Andy.
Go ahead and say my answer, Stevie.
Was your answer the Atlantis in high school?
No. So, I mean, Atlantis was one. But the small idea that came up, I'm going to say for the Hero of Darkness series, it's an episode of Criminal Minds. One of these throwaway episodes, villain of the week, the team defeats him soundly at the end. But this character, he heard the voice of his father in his head. And the father only fell silent when he killed somebody. And so, it's an Asian guy, one of the very, very few Asian antagonists that they've ever had. So it stood out to me for that. But then when he sees, the voice of his disapproving father in his head that drives him to kill, I was sort of still crafting the idea of the hunter. And, I wanted Badass Assassin, which came from The Night Angel and The Lies of Locke Lamora. I love the underside of fantasy. But then when this idea of the voice of the hunter's father, the demon in his head, popped into my mind, I was like, oh shit, this opens so many cool things, because I hadn't decided to make the hunter half demon yet. And I knew he was going to fight demons, but I didn't know what the deal was. And then all of a sudden he's half demon, and the story just opened up in ridiculous ways.
For me, I was, I think, 12 or 14 years old, and I wanted to write a book about dinosaurs because I had this access to someone who knew so much about them. Of course, it took me until I was 26 years old to write it. But I had this idea where it was 3 teenage boys. I mean, you can already see the problem. I had this daydream that 3 teenage boys who were playing Halo were actually secret agents who got called to go back in time to stop other time travelers from screwing up the past. And something crazy happens, and then they get mutated with certain animals. So now you got like this Animorph mixed with Stargate, and it's just really weird. It was broken. It was just me trying to overpower my protagonists and make them cool. No real character development, but I look back at it with fondness because the feelings were there. I wanted a cool story, and it was a cool story, but no flaws at all. Every character was Johnny Bravo, right? They were just all perfect.
Yeah.
I think I was like half lion or something. It was crazy. A was raptor, and then my best friend at the time, Wesley, who I haven't heard from in 3 years. It's weird. I think he was like a snake or something. So 12-year-old thoughts right there.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever told anyone about that one yet, but that was the very first story idea I've ever had.
All right, so we got time for one more question, and then we close out. So who's gonna throw us a good one?
Let's see a good one. Dragonlance. Yeah, I read some Dragonlance. I have a Dragonlance.
I will say the Dragonlance has Tasselhoff Burrfoot, which is still one of the most memorable characters of all time for me. Like the his approach to just being a pickpocket, hilarious. He's so innocent. So they just left it here. I just found it sitting there, and it happened to be inside their pocket or inside their pouch or inside their pack. But he's so innocent and naive about it that it was just hilarious. Every time he came on screen, I loved reading his stuff. I wish they would give me more of him. I think they did one book that's more like focused around him, but it was just hilarious. All right, Stevie.
Wait, what is it? Best romance cliche that you enjoy. I've always have liked the idea of our main character. He's like the silly one who he doesn't really have a fascination with this girl, but this girl definitely doesn't like him. But it turns out she starts falling for him. I mean, he likes her, but he's not crazy for her. But she starts falling for him just because she starts seeing the goodness in him, the good deed, his value as a male lead. So the cliche is just getting the girl who doesn't like the guy. It's very broad, but I kind of pull in just a little bit, and I try and change it up a few ways. The girl can be either princess-like or she can be tomboy-like. Either way, I figure out a way for her to just hate the protagonist, but then slowly fall for him. In the Bizarre Blade series, I do not follow that cliche, which was a blast. I actually have a girl who's ditzy. Ditzy is the wrong word. She's not dumb. She's incredibly smart, but she bound with the blade that messed with her mind, right, and made her a little bit crazy. And she falls for him in a very natural way, just like as regular people day to day fall for somebody. And it was wonderful. I really enjoyed writing that. That was my way of pulling back the romance for fantasy, honestly. But my cliche is that very dramatic, I hate you, I love you now. So what do you think, Andy?
I really, really like the damaged characters.
Of course you do.
Who their damage just fits in a perfect puzzle piece. Like I did that with Alana and Rhea. Like just the way that those two people found solace with each other after everything they'd endured. It wasn't, this fiery, passionate romance, oh my God, it's just, I have to have you or I'm going to die. But it's just, they just fit together so perfectly that it made sense. It felt right. And I'd like to think I've done that, hopefully properly, in the Silent Champion series. But I just love seeing that because, when you have one person who is damaged and then one person who is not damaged. And again, damaged is a word that I'm using to encapsulate so many different things and to sort of sum it up so it's not thing, but basically someone who's been psychologically scarred through all kinds of shit that's happened to them. When you have sort of one person who has not been who hasn't gone through that sort of thing, it creates this imbalance in a way that the relationship is harder to portray accurately. So it's only when you have two people that, not only, but I find that when I have two characters who have been through the shit, not necessarily together, but they've been through a lot of shit, that it makes their union or their pairing feel more natural, because it means that despite everything that's happened to break them, they are still human beings and they can sort of find their romantic pairing or their soulmate in someone else. And it comes from this quote from The Wedding Crashers, which is absolutely one of the deepest and most meaningful movies of all times. But the quote in there, it says, love is the soul's recognition of its counterpoint in another. And I love that concept because it doesn't matter who two people are. When they find that counterpoint in someone else, there's going to be a way for them to come together, no matter if they're, the highest ranking prince or princess and the lowest ranking, the poorest beggar, or whether they're people who absolutely can't end up together or shouldn't. Whatever it is, they're going to come together. And I like that.
Of course, yours are damaged. Damaged, but not different, right?
Exactly.
Or
no, different, but not damaged. But in this case, it works. Well, you know what? It's 6:31, so we are probably going to have to close off. Man, this was fun.
The questions were a lot of fun. I think we should do that more often.
Yeah. That could be cool. We can try to schedule one of these Stevie and Andy and Stevie After Dark podcasts every couple of months.
We need someone else on the podcast with the first name S, and we can just call it the Ass episode.
No, bad.
That's why I'm going to get your spray bottle. This is why
terrible jokes.
Good sci-fi author, because men love that. They love ass jokes. Okay, Andy, who is our guest for next week?
Our guest next week is going to be James Quinlan Messervy. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's going to be on.
I'm going to have fun with that one.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Everybody tune in at the beginning of the podcast to hear Stevie mangle his name.
God, his last name may be Mangle. Awesome. Well, that is it for this Fantasy Fiends podcast, guys. We really appreciate all your questions and hanging out with us. I think we were up to we were up to 10 or 11 viewers, so we really appreciate.
I saw 10, yeah.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much. Please hit that like button and subscribe button. Remember, at 500, we are doing something very special for you. I don't know if we said it on air or if it's a secret, Andy.
I feel like we said it on air. No, we talked about it right after going off air.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to tell them, or do you want to keep it secret until 500? That way they have to like it to find out. They have to subscribe to find out.
Let's keep it a secret till we hit 500.
It is cool, and it probably will be a longer episode and might end up with both Andy and I asleep. So that was too much, huh? I don't want to give it away.
A little bit too much.
Crap. Okay, well, forget I said anything. All right, guys, that is it for the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We really hope you enjoyed your stay at the Fantasy Fiends Inn with us. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you guys next Thursday. We love you all. Have a great night.
Bye.